What is up, everyone? It's David. Welcome back to GRADED MTG, where we talk about all things related to graded Magic the Gathering cards. Today's going to be a fun day. I'm going to walk you through a whole bunch of different cards that I've purchased recently in a whole bunch of different price ranges, ranging from $25 all the way up to a few $100s. And I want to show you that no matter how much you have to spend, there's something out there in the graded world for you. So if you're somebody who maybe has never purchased a graded card before, or if you haven't purchased a graded card in a while, I'm going to show you that no matter what your budget is, there's a cool, unique card that you can pick up for your collection. And the reason that I'm doing this is that I think a lot of times, especially for newer collectors, someone who's maybe never purchased a graded card, there's this notion that everything is very high dollar, very exclusive. You need a ton of money to get into it. And I want to show you that that's not true at all. There's a ton of unique, awesome cards, reserve list cards, vintage Magic cards that you can buy at very, very good prices that anybody can afford. And I want to show you that no matter what your budget is, there's something out there in the graded world for you. And if you're interested in graded cards and you found me out here in the wild world of YouTube, I would really appreciate it if you joined the channel and subscribed. I'm trying to grow this channel on YouTube because there's really not a lot of people talking about graded cards on a regular basis, and I'm trying to change that. There's such a great community of people who are buying, selling, collecting graded Magic cards, and there's not a lot of people talking about graded Magic cards on YouTube on a regular basis, and I'm trying to change that, and I would love for you to be a part of it. So please hit that subscribe button and join in the fun. All right, let's get right into these cards. All right, so let's go through this first section here. So this is going to be cards that I have purchased all in the $25 to $50 range recently. And I think that cards like this are a great way to get into graded collecting. They're about the price of buying, like a collector booster pack if you're used to purchasing a product like that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first card here. So this is Political Trickery from Mirage, CGC Graded 9, and then a CGC 9 Triangle of War from Visions, and a CGC 9 Recycle from Tempest. So you can see all three of these cards are CGC graded as Mint 9. All three of these cards are reserved list cards, which I really like. They're reserved list cards from the Silver Age, and that's a type of card that I really like a lot. I've talked about it on this channel before. But this is a great way to get into graded collecting without having to spend too much money. And if you are interested in reserve list cards, for example, and you like cards like this, rather than buying multiple copies of a card, you can take that money and invest it into a high grade graded copy of that card. And I really like doing that. I generally prefer to do that rather than buying lots of copies of a single card for a few reasons. There's the storage aspect, there's the shipping aspect. It's very easy to buy a lot of lower value card copies, a lot of copies of cards, but unloading them and selling them is a whole other story. And in order for things like buy listing them, you really have had to have the cards spike a lot in order for buy listing to really make you any money. It happens, yeah, but generally you have to actually sell your cards on the open market. And selling lots of copies of cards, it's not easy. Trust me, I've done it. And I generally prefer to get high grade graded copies of cards for cards that I believe in. It makes it easier from a storage and shipping standpoint, and a number of other reasons too. But yeah, cards like this, if you're used to spending $25 to $50 on a Magic card or a Magic product, this is a way to get into graded collecting, reserve list cards. These are all cards with unique abilities and cool artwork and a high grade. And one of the things about these cards in particular is these are all CGC graded cards, which generally at this point carry a lower premium than the equivalent Beckett or PSA grade. And I think that that's going to change over time eventually. And I think that CGC graded cards offer, kind of a discount, if you will, compared to some other cards. But yeah, so I think that these cards represent that budget level pretty well. So let's move on to cards that are in the, $50 to $100 range. So let's get started here. I actually have a few copies of this card. I really like this card. um, so this is Mana Web from Weatherlight. And again, I've got a CGC graded 9 and then two Beckett 9s. So all three of these, they're the same card in the same grade, and I would value them all in the $50 to $100 range. And again, this is a reserve list card with a really unique ability. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, they have to tap all their lands for mana, and of that type that it could produce. And it's just a really unique card, and I just think that cards like this on the reserve list have a really good future. That the ones that have unique effects and good artwork, I really like those cards. But let's go ahead and show a couple other cards here in that price point. Here's another reserve list artifact. This one is from Visions. And then we've got Recurring Nightmare from Exodus. So more reserve list cards with great artwork and unique abilities. Really like this stuff. And so this is a little more expensive, but again, all of these cards are less than the price of buying a booster box. So if you're somebody who's used to spending, $50 to $100 on pre-constructed decks or booster boxes, you could take that similar amount of money and invest it into a high grade reserve list card like these. They're a little more expensive than the ones that we talked about earlier, but they're more iconic, valuable cards as well. And there's also stuff that I've purchased that is a little more vintage in that price range. So let's take a look at those right now. Here we've got a Spell Blast from Beta, a Nettling Imp from Beta, and a Tranquility from Beta. So all three of these were also purchased in that price point, and I really like cards like this. These are all from Beta, some graded as high as 9.5. Spell Blast is a common, Tranquility is a common, and the Nettling Imp is an uncommon. But beautiful Quentin Hoover art. These original sets in high grade, I think, are just going to continue to have a very high floor and continue to appreciate in value as sets like Beta, just get harder and harder to find in good condition, and as the grading standards evolve over time. I think that cards like this that you can pick up still in that $50 to $100 range are a fantastic, fantastic safe bet for for graded Magic collecting. And again, these are about, each of these was, less than or equal to the price of a booster box. Okay, so let's move on to some cards that are a little more expensive. These are going to be cards that are in the $100 to $200 range. So these are going to be, a little more than buying something like a booster box or something like that. But I still think that cards like this are a great entry point into graded collecting if you have, something like $100 to $200 to spend on Magic or vintage Magic, reserve list Magic, newer Magic, whatever it is that you like to collect. There's a lot of stuff available in that price range, and it's a great way to get into the hobby with a card like, let's take a look at this first one. This is a Swamp from Alpha. So this is a 9 quad plus Alpha Swamp. Absolutely beautiful card from the original set Alpha. A card like this has such a high floor. The fact that it's a 9 quad plus makes it a very attractive card. It's in a very high grade. And even though it's a basic land, it's not a reserve list card, but it's just from the most iconic Magic set of all time, the first one, and being able to own cards like this, I see as almost like owning a piece of history. These cards are getting very expensive, and for good reason. They're sought after by a lot of collectors, and the ones that you can still get now, you can still get high grade graded Alpha cards for, 100, 200, $300. So if you really like that high-end vintage Magic, here's the type of card that you can get. Let's take a look at another one. This is Psionic Blast from Unlimited. So once again, not a reserve list card, but a very iconic vintage Magic card. It has that iconic Douglas Schuler artwork. It has a very unique effect. It's blue direct damage, 4 damage to any target, but 2 damage to you as well. I really like cards like this. Unlimited is getting more and more valuable. People are starting to realize like the print run on Unlimited was really not that big by today's standards. Obviously, it's a lot more than Alpha and Beta, but it has that white border, the beautiful coloring. And so even though it's not a reserve list card, the fact that it's an unlimited copy of a unique card in a very high grade, I really think that cards like Psionic Blast from Unlimited are another good example of something in the $100 to $200 range that you can still buy. Let's take a look at another one. So this is a Heirloom Minotaur from Beta. This is a gem mint card graded by CGC, 9.5 centering, 10 on the surface, 9 corners, 9.5 edges. And once again, I think CGC is a good company. I like the cards. The label, don't get me wrong, I'm still getting used to the label. I'm not in love with the label. I think that they could really use a label redesign. But it's still, I think their grading standards are very accurate. I think that they, right now, the gem mint and mint cards from CGC that you can still pick up at a discount compared to Beckett is a good way to get into the hobby. CGC's only been around for a very short while grading Magic cards, and in the grand scheme of things, when it's been 3, 5, 10 years and they become more established, I could see the premium gap that exists now closing slowly over time. So being able to get a beta card in gem mint condition, finding gem mint beta cards from Beckett is quite expensive. They command a very strong premium generally, but CGC, you can find some deals on it. So I thought that was a good example as well. And let's take a look another card, another CGC graded card. This is Ball Lightning from the Dark. So once again, this is not a reserve list card, but it's a very iconic card. Everybody knows Ball Lightning. It was a super popular card to play with. It's not as popular now, but the 6/1 trample, it's just Quentin Hoover art. This is such a cool card to have. And sets like the Dark are so hot right now. I really think that high grade copies of cards from the Dark are a great buy. It's very hard to find cards from sets like the Dark in very good condition that are actually grade worthy. It's honestly, it's just as hard to me as finding cards from sets like Beta. Like there's more of them, don't get me wrong, but even though there's more of them, there's a lot of them that are just not in grade worthy condition. So I think that over time, again, the premium on cards like Ball Lightning that are, in a high grade from vintage sets, I think they're going to have a very good future. And so that's all the cards that I wanted to talk about in that price point. But I think these 4 cards give you a really good array of stuff, both vintage, Magic, that you can still get in a high grade at that price point. So these cards are all cards that I would put into the around 2 to 400 range, maybe a little bit over. But here's some more iconic vintage Magic cards. Starting off here with an Air Elemental from Beta. Look at that. Beautiful card in gem mint condition. Each of these cards that I'm going to show here are Beta cards in gem mint condition. Just like I talked about with the Tranquility and the Nettling Imp, these are These are more iconic cards from Beta. This is an uncommon card, but the artwork is just stunning. It's an extremely high grade, and once again, I think that, for about the price of, maybe a collector booster box, or building an EDH deck or something like that, that similar amount of money you can put into a card like this, a very iconic Beta gem mint card. And once again, I think that the floor on a card like this is so high that it makes it a very, low risk investment. And I think that the future is very bright for cards like this as grading standards evolve and as more collectors get into the hobby. Let's take a look at another Beta card in gem mint condition. This is Ice Storm. So neither of these are reserved list cards. But again, once you get back to, those really early sets of Magic, whether or not it's on the reserve list doesn't really matter as much. I mean, it matters. There's definitely, reserve list cards that command a really strong premium. But even like the regular commons and uncommons from those sets are very, very collectible. And let's take a look at this last one. So this is Beta Island. So this is the version 1 Island in gem mint condition. I absolutely love this artwork by Mark Poole. I go back and forth on which island art is my favorite, to be honest with you, from the base sets, but this is definitely up there. It's just such an amazing card to look at. And this is, again, it's a basic land. This is not an uncommon card or a rare, but just because it's such an iconic card, and it's so, it's a card that everybody recognizes. So even though it's a basic land, it commands a very strong premium. Look at the mountain from Arabian Nights. Those in gem mint condition, yeah, it's a basic land, but certain types of basic lands, especially islands in particular from sets like Alpha and Beta, they command a very strong premium, and there's a lot of people who really, really like these. So again, that gives you a very, there's a lot of people who are interested in cards like this. It's very easy to find a buyer for cards like this. And again, if you're looking to spend, a few $100s on Magic cards, doing this puts it into something that has, a very high floor. I think cards like this are going to have very low volatility in terms of their value while the market shifts and time goes on. I think that cards like this are just kind of a really safe bet, and I think that as the years go on, they're going to appreciate in value consistently. And they're just it's great because you get all of that money that you wanted to invest into a single card that you need to store, that you need to ship if you ever wanted to sell it, that you have to package only once if you ever want to sell it. That's something that I really want to talk about, because something that I notice, or just I notice a lot of people, they like to buy a lot of copies of cards. And it is fun, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I've never done it, but it's very easy to buy a lot of cards. It's a lot harder to actually sell those cards. And when you are able to take a large amount of money and put it into a single card or two, it's so much less that you have to worry about. It's expensive and time consuming to ship and package a lot of Magic cards. It's hard to find buyers. A lot of times, if you want to move a significant number of cards, it's not like you can just cash them in like you're in the stock market. Like, you have to list those cards. There has to be a buyer. If you auction those cards off, generally you're going to get a little less than listing them. If you list them, there's no telling how long it's going to take you to move them. So I would be very wary of stocking up on tons and tons of copies of cards, and I would strongly encourage you to take some of that and instead invest it into high graded copies of cards that you really like. That's something that's worked out for me personally. And I would recommend it, if you want to get into graded cards. Stop buying so many copies of cards and buy high grade graded copies of those cards. It'll give you a lot less to worry about now and in the future. All right, so that's it. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a really good time making it, and I hope that it made you feel like no matter what your budget is, there's something out there in the graded world for you. It's not this exclusive club that you need a ton of money to get into. There's a lot of cool Magic cards, whether you like vintage cards, reserve list cards, newer cards, you have a favorite artist, you have certain pet cards that you like. There is so much available on the graded market that you can buy regardless of what your budget is. If you have, less than $50 to spend, you like reserve list cards, here's a great example of a card that you can buy. If you were maybe thinking about getting a booster box or building a certain deck, and instead you want to invest it into a high grade vintage Magic card, you can get a card like this. If you've got a little bit more to spend, and maybe you were going to buy a collector booster box or something, instead you could invest that into a high grade vintage Magic card like this, a Gem Mint Beta card. There's really something out there for everybody, regardless of what your budget is. And I hope that you learned that from this video. I really want more and more people to feel comfortable and welcome into the graded community. There's a lot of people who are just getting into this. I know I've got a lot of new subscribers recently. There's a lot of people who have contacted me, have said, I've never purchased a graded card before. It seems kind of overwhelming. The prices are so high. And I just want to show you that you look around, there's a lot of stuff that you can find. And if there's any cards that you're interested in, feel free to shoot me an email. My email's always in the contact details below in the description. Happy to talk shop with you guys and give you any kind of feedback that you might have on a card that you're looking at getting. Anyway, I'm so happy to see that there's been new subscribers. There's a ton of new people who are getting into graded Magic collecting and grading, and it's very exciting, and I'm very much looking forward to it. And I hope that this video gave you an idea of the different cards that you can purchase regardless of what your budget is. All right, thanks so much for joining. If you're not already a subscriber here on Gem Mint MTG, hit that subscribe button and join in the fun. I'm going to be talking about graded cards all the time here. Until next time, thank you. Have a great one.